the biggest challenge has been the inertia of the system, that whenever you bring something new, people take time to sort of adjust and accommodate, especially the ones who have remained in power and politics before you. They feel that their way was the right way, and there can be no other way for the right way. I'll share with examples. So I remember when Prime Minister came to power and said that open bank accounts for everyone. Now, very simple data that after 70 years of India's independence, when we were a population of 120 odd crore people, at that time the number of bank accounts in India was 11 crore 86 lakhs, close to, say, let's, as a round figure, we say 12 lakhs. So it was 12 lakhs. For 120 crore people. So the moment he took over, he said open bank accounts, and within a span of 4 months, we opened 52, 53 crore bank accounts, out of which 48 crores were zero balance Jan Dhan accounts. How much were we mocked for this? How much resistance did we get for this? You're spoiling the banking system, they don't have money to put in the banks, so on and so forth. But the result? The result is that within a few seconds, you can transfer a few lakh crore into the accounts of those farmers who need Pradhan Mantri Samman Nidhi, Kisan Samman Nidhi gets transferred, Ujjwala Yojana subsidy gets transferred, scholarships get transferred. Those who need to take money from say Mudra Yojana, those numbers get to be counted. Women who need to be beneficiaries under Startup India, Stand Up India get to be benefited. And biggest thing that the people from the former government and now part of opposition used to say that if 100 rupees travel from the center, only 15 reaches, and rest obviously gets leaked through the way. Now with this banking system, if 100 travels, 100 reaches, and when the person withdraws that money, it becomes 110. That is the change of in inclusion. People talked about inclusion but did nothing about inclusion. So that's the kind of change you have successfully brought in, number one. Number two, the second example I'll give is from Digital India. So 2010, and whenever the last survey and things happened, China, for example, was ahead of us, was number one place for digital payment systems, etc., etc. And that also is a response to transparency, good governance, easy access to financial systems and schemes. Now, when we brought in Digital India, how much were we mocked? These people are illiterate, they don't know how to use the phone, from where are the phones going to come, how is the system going to run, etc., etc. But today, 44% of digital transactions are happening in our country. 129 crore phones exist in this country. 79 crore people use smartphone. And we have the cheapest, or I can use the word inexpensive internet in the world, where 1 GB data is less than 10 rupees as compared to 330 rupees outside in other parts of the world. A few lakh of panchayats and villages have been connected to internet. All these changes have happened because of Modinomics. Reaching out to the unreached was the first mantra which he showcased, and mainstreaming those people who were marginalized was the other case. And the result is that if the annual budget for the country used to be 14 lakh plus odd crores, today has become 40 lakh plus crores. That's the change. So, say from economic principle based conversation, I would say that investment in infrastructure, for example. You build ports, you build roads, you build airports, when you start investing in infrastructure, the short-term ramification is that few thousand lakhs crores of people will get employed. The material will be sold. So you're boosting the economy. You're creating jobs. You are helping people to sell their products. You're creating, it's like a circle, and that circle starts to set the economic growth, and that's what you're trying to do. Number one. The second long-term aspect is that none of these expenses are short-term kind of a thing. It's more like investment. So if you invest in road infrastructure, it will stay there for few years, few decades to come by. People get access to health, people get access to education, people get access to employment, people get access to migration, people get access to jobs, people get access to services, so on and so forth. So it will have a ripple effect. So Modinomics will also have a sense where these investments are made with a long-term perspective also. In short term, few people get benefited, but in long term, generations get benefited. I mean, a small thing that less than 70, 62 or 68 was the number of airports in the whole country. Just imagine a country as big as this had only few airports. Because you had so few airports, your connectivity is impacted. Today you have more than 145 airports, and then you start services, then you may start helicopter services, then you may start logistic chain management, production capacity, so on and so forth, and transport capacity. So airport to road to rail to ports, everything gets connected, and that's where the boost to economy lies, and production and the sale of that production, transport of that production, everything gets impacted. So I think these are done and with huge effort, and the intention is very clear, and the intention is to support the people, entrepreneurs who generate jobs for others, a common young person who wants to start a startup, a common woman who wants to have a small shop and run her business to sell some products, from jewelry making to saris to other dresses. So I think small, big, biggest, everyone gets benefited as part of the same supply chain. Thank you. You very rightly pointed out that a lot has changed. A lot needs to be changed, and Prime Minister, if I may remind everyone, used to say and has said it often कि मैं अभी तक गड्ढे भरने का काम कर रहा हूँ. So the fact is that India's potential was huge. India's potential is huge, and during this period, we could not accomplish what our capacity should have. So post 47, there was a huge momentum to build India. There was a huge momentum to work for India. Many countries who started off around the same period as we did, 1947, so some may have come up in 46, some have come up in 48, 50, 52, like that. Some very big economies came after that, who were much smaller than us in terms of resource, in terms of population, in terms of capacity and the motivation. So we did not encash what should have been encashed. We dipped down really bad in our global economic sphere, and subsequently that economic sphere was to be handled differently, and that started to happen post 2014. And when we started handling those aspects differently, the results are before everyone to see. We'd become one economy amongst the five as fragile five, ab gaye kab gaye. what we see today in Pakistan and worse, we could have reached that situation. But fortunately, a different kind of economics and a different motivation started to work in this country. And things may look tough for the wrongdoers, but they were good for the country. And from one of the worst economies which were at the breakneck, we became which were on the brink of being broken up, we became the top 5 economies. Now that would not have happened had these steps not been taken, had India First policy not been adopted. And when I look at Prime Minister Modi, I feel no matter who's on the opposite side, Prime Minister is focused with respect to the protection of Indian interest and conserving energy for the Indian benefit and getting the best out of everyone, negotiate things in favor of India from everyone, from every person, every leader, every country. So keep working for the benefit of our people, and that is very, very clear in his approach and in his dealings internationally. See, 21st century, and if I look at the time right now, it's a very uncertain times is what we are going through. Everyone is looking forward to peaceful and better times and to harmonize many a conflict in the world, but probably people do not know how to do it. And as a resolver of problems and as a conflict resolution mechanism, I can say that from the life experience our Prime Minister has, he has an insight into finding ways in the worst times. So his capacity of problem solving is immense, and that is where he is probably looked at by many people across within the country and outside the country, that his unwavering attitude, stay focused on his deeds and find resolutions to deep-seated conflicts is very big, which has worked in his favor through his personal life and also as a Prime Minister of a country where he stayed earlier for a very long term as a Chief Minister of a state also. So all that experience can be put to better use when it comes to getting an insight into problem resolutions. So what happens, again, I would say in international relationship, everyone is protecting the interest of their own country and their own people. Let's be very clear on that. And powers, who be it, they will have always a different interest in image building or breaking or breaching. And that point in time, I would also say that vested interests would have tried to tarnish the image, which over a period of time many countries, leaders and others would have understood that they were waylaid into believing something which is completely contrary to the factual situation, and sometimes propaganda can take better off from the most astute people also, and when they realize that this was probably error of perception, they would immediately change, because it helps them in their pursuance of their interest to work with the person. So I think in case of PM, if I say talk facts, I have always talked about facts. Even 2002 narrative, I have always said that 2002 was a built-up narrative. The IB reports, the processes which took place in the country, cases went up to the Supreme Court. The kind of narrative building that happened was contrary to what the reality is. This country has seen worse riots in the past. This country has seen yearly riots in areas. In fact, that was one of the last times that something went wrong, and at that point in time, he'd just taken over. Within a few days of his taking over, this was an attack to bring him down, so that people who were aware of his power as his strength tried to bring him down and attack him right at that moment when you're still gathering information, courage and all. And then even at that point in time, it was 28th of February, it's a leap year, and 1st of March, next day, 28th is not followed by 30 or 31st, it's 1st, and in which action happened. But 28th itself was so huge, and Godara, for example, was one place where many wrongs year on year, before partition, post partition, before independence, post independence used to happen. And all that changed, in which he started to get votes from those communities. So what people tried to create the narrative as, what the truth was, it's completely contrary to the things, but battle of perception came in his favor because of the kind of work he has done and the kind of delivery mechanisms he has restored. See, I am of the opinion that Indian interests have to be protected as two democracies, as two societies who are multi-ethnic. We understand that democracies can be noisy, but rule of law is what needs to prevail, and that brings respect for each other. And we continue to work for the good of our people and of course the global good as well. So the concept of defense has changed just now. The kind of fears which exist in a totally interconnected world has a different implication when it comes to defense. Civil society engagements to economic engagement, using trade as a tool, as a weapon, all kinds of things have changed. So diplomacy has multifarious engagements, and in those multifarious engagements we need to work together for the good of our respective countries as well as in the interest of democracies and also the global good. And for global good, we must also understand that it doesn't have to be love at first sight, but it has to be respect for each other, which should bring the proximity and which should get people together and which should bring prosperity, harmony and peace to both sides. So I would say when people say India is a bright spot, we are a bright spot on many counts. Of course, we have a very large youth population, so our engagement with the youth means leader of the future, who are not only going to lead my country but will be the future leaders, global leaders, will come from this country. Skilled manpower is what we have. With our digital footprints, we have proven that we've already jump-start the next revolution. Most important, and which is less spoken about, the character of Indians. We are trustworthy people and we are honest, upright people. And because we are honest, upright, trustworthy people who do not get into difficulties and do not put others into difficulties, we don't have very many negative traits. So whenever Indians go outside the country, they work for themselves, yes, but they also support the societies in which they start to live. And that positivity in other economies, which may have been at the top at some point in time, but today they are suffering because of aging population, lack of human resource, and having people who are, maybe generating conflicts or are being part of the conflicts. On the contrary, Indians are completely the opposite. If there is a problem, You will see a whole lot of them doing langar seva, helping people, running soup shops. So I think in that sense, the biggest quality which is so understated is the trustworthiness of Indians, and that trustworthiness with a very compassionate outreach needs to be spoken of more often. And people who do business with us would have understood that when you do business with Indians, it's business on the table and not really under the table or at the back of somebody. We say and we deliver and we walk off. We do not work for debt traps or create difficulties or conflicts or breach social goodwill. We are not into that, and that is the strength which India possesses and Indians have. You know, Indian proximity to Russia is one of the factors which has retarded Russian outreach to China. So directly, indirectly, we've been part of that decision making. The second aspect is that okay, we've been buying oil, but everybody else has benefited from it. Whole of Europe has benefited from it. Two, when we were buying, our traditional suppliers of oil used to be people from Middle East. Those are our traditional friends and suppliers at the same time. But if people at a higher rate and other regions start to procure that oil, what am I going to do? I'll have to look for new sources and balancing the interest of Indians. Because if I don't purchase oil, my economy, my people, requirement for food, transport, everything will come to a standstill. So till you are Atmanirbhar in your energy needs, you'll have to buy it from somewhere. And if source A has been shut down because source A is used by others, then source B needs to be looked at. So that's what India has done. And I think everybody has understood that. And that understanding is there in the face of all the things. And the point is that when sanctions were imposed on Russians, again, we represent Global South, by the way. And so those sanctions will always have the highest impact on the people and countries at the bottom of the pyramid. So I can explain it to you through certain examples. And my biggest example is pandemic. So when the world was crashing under pandemic, we produced our own vaccines, which were reasonable, high quality, top of the line product. And I know of many people who would walk into my office and say, you know, this is my 4th shot, this is my 5th shot. And I'm like, really? I'm fine with 2 shots. And I'll, you know, say it gleefully that 2 are enough. We produced a very sophisticated product at not so expensive price. It was inexpensive compared to other prices. But when we had the product and we saw many small countries who didn't have the pharmaceutical capacity to produce those drugs, we gave it to them. We did not try to use that as a market opportunity. Wherever we could give this as a support, we didn't even call it an aid or a grant. We call it developmental cooperation, because we understand the value of respect you give, the respect you get in return, and the value of friendship, not really in tangible terms, in rupee and dollar terms, but in terms of human value, and that is friendship you generate. So our COVID-19 diplomacy set the ball rolling as to what India is. India stands for global good, India stands for harmony, and India does not believe in squeezing others when the moments which are difficult come in everyone's life personally and nationally. So that's the value system India brings on the table, and that's how you share that value. Now that will get reflected in various other engagements. We also came across as a first responder. So be it Nepal earthquake, be it what happened, the water crisis in Maldives, Mozambique, any difficulty anywhere, Turkey, recently earthquake. So no matter whatever happens, but in certain times you have to rise above interests which are political in nature and work for human cause. And when we say Vasudev Kutumbakam, it's not just a slogan, but we believe in it and we bring it true with our action. And that has been the philosophy which has been guiding us. Another aspect which has probably not been noted by many, but I want to sort of record it and bring it on record. All kind of, people talk all kinds of things, but I always say that there should be an inward mirror looking into those societies. So Georgians had a queen called Queen Katavan. Her mortal relics were distributed to 5 or more such places in the church. They were kept away because she was sacrificed in a jail. A part of her relic came to India during Portuguese rule. It was kept in a church in Goa. India spent 17 long years or 19 long years in excavating that church. And while excavating that chapel, we found the relics. Of course, it becomes India's property because it's archaeological find. But when this message was taken to the PM, and PM understood, it was almost like Mata Gujri's life in that cold tower being reenacted and repeated. When this was brought to the notice of the Prime Minister, he immediately said that Queen Katavan's relics, part of it be given to Georgia. So we'd taken as relics to that country where people just paid their respect and all and understood the value. The relics were brought back. Then part of the relic was given away to Georgians as their queens remain. Part of it is still with us in Goa, which has been resurrected in a particular space in the museum. And this showcases respect for all, appeasement of none, and we believe that identity of people needs to be respected, and humanity is above everything else, and that goes to prove India's point of view of how we have existed as a society. Many probably have tried to derail the conversation, have reported it differently, and not looking at the fault lines in their own civilization and global development. So I think India is setting that course right as well. We'll cross the bridge when it comes. A lot needs to be weighted, a lot needs to be seen, but facts need to be understood. And factually, just for the ones who sort of take interest in strategy, have to understand that there are at various levels many deep investments which work both ways. Some amount of trade, something like 330 metric tons of goods travel to US every day from China, which few people know. What the government thinks, how the corporates behave, what is the public opinion. Like any democracy, is the combination or convergence of the three will be responsible for the changes one is looking at. So there is a lot going on, there is a lot which is expected, but a lot needs to be watched for. So I would not comment one way or the other. No, I think geostrategic engagement will be there, and that would be the key. There is a very large Indian diaspora in US, which is a very active diaspora in that country, and being democratic countries at both ends, and somewhere that identity, once an Indian, the body is wherever but the soul is here. That kind of connectivity those people definitely have in India. And rule of law people understand, but when acts out, obviously the perception with non-democratic countries would be there, but the engagement can be at different levels. So I'm sure all these aspects, technical assistance to each other, technical well-being, fintech, space and defense technology, strategic thinking, semiconductors is a lot in the news, but I really will have to check, because semiconductor technology was shifted by US to Taiwan at some point in time, and then those people became masters at that. Where India is looking at, or where US is looking at, the engagement is still to be worked at. Phone manufacturing, we've all seen from other phones to iPhone are getting manufactured here. So when we are a market, but we are also a hub of innovation, we are also a hub of startups, we also have 108 unicorns, we also have skilled manpower. So these are engagements on so many subjects which will probably benefit both, but depends on who calculates the tables and who makes the tables.
Download now